Namaste and greetings. I'm Mahima Kapoor, researcher and assistant editor at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, Nai Delhi. Welcome you all to the IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we have gathered for a talk under the series, The State of Foreign Trade, #Talking Trade, with Professor Takahiro Sato on global value chain participation of the Indian economy. This deliberation is being organized by the IMPRI Center for the Study of Finance and Economics. I feel privileged to introduce the chair for the session, Professor Mukul. Sir is the former professor, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. We welcome you, sir. I am honored to introduce the speaker, Professor Takahiro Sato. Dr. Sato is a professor of the Research Institute for Economics and Business Administration at Kobe University. His areas of research are development economics and studies on the Indian economy. He has authored many books and articles which have appeared in the Journal of Policy Modeling, Economics of Governance, Oxford Development Studies, Economic and Political Weekly, Journal of Asian Economics, and European Journal of Development Research. In 2007, Sir received the first JASIS Award from the Japanese Association for South Asian Studies. We welcome you, sir. We are fortunate to have Professor Dev Nathan and Professor Amita Batra as the discussants for the session. Professor Dev Nathan is an eminent economist and research director at GenDev Center for Research and Innovation, Gurgaon. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Professor Amita Batra is a professor at the Center for South Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Welcome, ma'am. We have with us Dr. Nalin Bharti as the moderator. Sir is the Associate Professor at Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Patna. Welcome, sir. Now, I invite Professor Usher to take the proceedings further, and we look forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Thank you.
Thank you. Pranam, namaskar. May I thank, first of all, IMPRI to invite me and for organizing such an interesting seminar on a topic that is both relevant and timely. And what is impressive about the research on global value chain participation of the Indian economy is that it has a lot of empirical research possibilities that we will see when the presentation is made by Sensei Takahiro Sato-san. We know that globally we are undergoing a very dynamic and in somewhat uncertain change. We have a hegemon, US, which is being challenged by others. We had liberal world order for quite some time, few decades, and the global value chain analysis, concepts, data is when the liberal world order was fairly robust and thriving. But now we are moving towards somewhat more fragmented global political economy. There was a very interesting report that I suggest by Rabo Bank called The World in 2030, in which they look at the economic, military, cultural, and other dimensions of power, and they project or they have scenarios about how different countries are going to react to this increasing fragmentation that we are witnessing from the move away from liberal world order that prevailed. Japan and India both are part of that picture that the Rabobank has nicely sketched. One of the slogans that sort of captures this is that we are moving away from just in time, which was the Japanese concept of just in time manufacturing, to just in case, so that we have now some the different ways of adjusting to the dynamics of globalization. For India, that is essentially summarized by the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan and Be Vocal for Local initiatives. Globally, there are many variants of these two that the countries are trying. So what would be, what is I would call a research goldmine of GVA is how this GVA will play out in the coming years in both aggregate way and in a disaggregated way. Will those that were really at the forefront of benefiting from GVA, for example, ASEAN 5 and Vietnam in recent years, will they continue to benefit, or will we see a different patterns emerging among the countries? And we have no better person than Sensei Sato-san from Kyoto Universities to acquaint us, to educate us with the dynamics of the GVA. I very much look forward to the presentation. I will make some more comments after the presentation if I have the opportunities. So may I now turn over the session to the moderator, Professor Nalin Bharti, please.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Asad. Now I will invite Dr. Sato to have his presentation. And once his presentation will be over, then we will take up some of the questions. And also, I will request the chairperson to speak a few points about the presentation by Professor Sato. So, Professor Sato, you can start your presentation now, and then we will take up some of the questions after that.
Yes. So thank you very much for inviting me as the main speaker of this seminar. So I'm very, very happy to be here for presenting my research, Global Value Chain Participation of the Indian Economy. So I share my slides with you. So can you see my slide?
Yes, it's on.
Nalin Bharti-san?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I start. So this is a outline my today's presentation. In the first two sections, I'd like to explain my motivation of this research. And then I investigate the GVC participation of the Indian economy at three levels. First level is macroeconomic and or international trade aspect. And the second level is related regarding to the micro level, farm level. And the third level is the industry level. Final section, I do conclusion. This is a introduction. So I recognize the GVC as driving force of economic development of developing countries. What is the GVC? GVC is the interdependence of value-added activity of numerous economic actors operating across national borders. This is a general definition of GVC. In today's global economy, global firms play a central role in organizing the GVC. Participation and upgrading in GVC is critically important for the economic development of developing countries. The terms and conditions under which Indian industry and firms participate in value creation at a certain stage of GVC in the chain-like global economy are critical for industrial development and farm growth. Indian firms that are part of GVC has the opportunity to enhance their capability by learning the latest technology, just in time, and management practice, kaizen activity in Japanese term. Firms that improve their capability will survive, while those that fail to improve their capability will be exit from the market. Through such selection, the upgrading of the entire industry will be promoted, so which will lead to the development of the Indian economy itself. So before investigation of the GVC participation of the Indian economy, I would like to show you 6 figures to give you rough understandings. What is the GVC? So first slide is relating to the global location of Toyota, major auto companies based in Japan, 2012. So Toyota had 50 manufacturing units, including the each regional headquarters. Sometimes this kind of the GVC network is called producer-driven. This is a typical type of the producer-driven type of the GVC. Second slide is refer to the global location of Nike. So this map shows the global location of Nike production unit. Now Nike has 36 countries and 458 factories, and Nike production unit employ more than 1 million workers in the world. So every day Nike updates this information. So this type of the GVC network is sometimes called as the buyers-driven. So this is the GlaxoSmithKline's R&D location in the world. Many R&D centers exist in the world. So we just look at the India. So in the global map, only 3 R&D center. But if we look at the Indian homepage of GSK, we see so many R&D center in India. So India is the hub of the R&D in the field of the pharmaceutical industry. And this is a TCS, global giant of IT firms in the world. So many locations they have. So what is GVC? If we delete the global, then we get the value chain. So originally, this value chain concept developed by the Michael Porter, Harvard Business School professor. So we can see the sorry. Sorry, I missed it. So this value chain has several stages. This stage is a very famous one: operations, branch operations, assembly, component fabrication. This is a production stage, before production and after production. These kind of the value chain stage as a primary activity. And also the supporting activity, this one, procurement, technological development, human resource management, farm infrastructure. Then this value chain finally has some profit margin. Then value chain generated the value in the world. So this concept is made by the Michael Porter. Final figures is relating to the assembly companies, Boeing, US-based airplane companies. So Boeing procure so many parts from so many countries, from US, from Canada, from Australia, Japan, Korea, EU. So many parts into the one airplane. So this is a typical case of the global production. So this is my outline. I try to again explain my strategy of my research. Section 2 clarifies the trends and characteristics of GVC participation of the Indian economy using World Bank GVC statistical data. Section 3 identifies the trends and characteristics of the GVC participation at the plant level in India's manufacturing sectors using unit level data of industrial statistics from the government of India. Section 4 summarizes the existing studies on GVC using Indian industry and firms as case studies and confirms the result of the GVC research. Final section summarizes these studies. Macroeconomic perspective. So I use the data set from the World Bank. Recently, World Bank released Global Value Chain World Development Report 2020 data. It is easily available for any person. So I focus on the concept of the GVC related output. What is the GVC related output? This concept is developed by the World Bank economists recently. GVC related output is the output of a country or sector which directly or indirectly cross more than one border. I think more than two borders. Not only more than one border, more than two borders, at least two borders. It provides a more general assessment of the amount of production of each sector that is relating GVC, because it takes into account the entire supply chain the sector participates to, regardless its direct involvement in export activity. So I use this concept, GVC related output per total output. So I measure this amount of the GVC participation by using the World Bank data set. So I'd like to try to explain more explicitly the concept of the GVC participation of ICE country. ICE country, in this context, please refer the India. I means India. I to J. I is India. J is Thailand, Indonesia, Pakistan, I don't know, China. I to J. I to J means export of ICE country to J's country. Please remember this definition. Then I want to explain that what is the GVC participation in general. So ICE country, India. India import intermediate goods from H country. And then India in some industry make some treatment to this intermediate input. Then India companies export the semi-product to J countries. So we can output cross H to I and I to J, more than two, at least two cross. So this is a GVC participation in general. Then GVC participation in general can be decomposed into three factors, three components. First component is the pure forward participation, pure forward participation. So this is there is no import from any country. India produce some intermediate goods based on their own resource. Then India export intermediate goods to J countries. Then J country make some treatment to this intermediate goods, then export to the K countries. So you can see more than two, at least two times this output cross the national borders. This is the pure forward participation. You can image this type of the GVC participation in the mining sector, iron ore, mangan, some coal. This kind of the commodity sometimes can be captured by this pure forward participation. Second concept is a pure backward participation. This is a very tricky case. This is India import some intermediate goods from the H countries. And then India export final goods to final destination of J countries. Or India export to some semi-product to J country, and inside J country, some companies in J country make some final goods, and consumer in J country consume these final goods. Final destination is J countries. This is a pure backward participation. Final concept in the GVC participation is a two-sided participation. This is a very general case, I think. So this is a very simple way. Import and export. Both activity conducted by countries. Then World Bank economists make this concept. Then if we summation 1, 2, 3 concept, then equal GVC participation in general. Okay, what is a traditional trade? This is a GVC related output or GVC participation. So what is the traditional trade as the GVC trade analysis? This one, traditional trade. India just based on their own resource, then export as the final goods. So this is a traditional trade. So there is no relating to the global production network or the global value. There is no involvement global value chain. Only one only one border only. So GVC related output from the point of the GVC related output, this kind of traditional trade is excluded. So this study focuses on GVC participation in general and GVC participation of engaging both import and export activity. So in this case, pure backward participation plus two-sided participation. I combined two concepts in the following slide. Then I make some figures to make international comparison. How to the stage, how to degree of the India's GVC participation compared to the other countries. You can see the most highly participated area economy is ASEAN 5 and Germany. You can see that from 1990s to the 2015s, especially the Germany case, very rapidly the improvement of the GVC participation in Germany. So Germany and ASEAN 5 is the highest level of GVC participation economy. Okay, India. India is the same as Japan. Very similar pattern in the Japan and India. Very low participation compared to other countries. So China is here. China is here. Okay, so then I like to check the India, China, ASEAN 5 only in the following this section. So this is a GVC participation of India, ASEAN 5, and China. This is a GVC related output per total output. So, okay, you can see the ASEAN 5 is very high, and and the lowest one is India. So, and we can see some trend from the 1990s up to 2008 global financial crisis. So we can see steadily improvement of the GVC participation in 3 economies. After 2008, GVC participation becomes stagnant or declined. So this is a common pattern in other countries. So this is GVC participation in terms of forward and backward GVC related output. Previous one, including the pure forward GVC participation included. This measurement exclude the pure forward participation, but still same pattern in the previous figures. Then we can focusing only India. So all India output into whole broad sector categories. One is agriculture, one is mining, one is manufacturing, last one is a service. Four main sector we can decompose. Then we can see the agriculture and service sector, the participation is very, very low. And the mining sector and the manufacturing sector is very high. And the trend is the same pattern in the total GVC related output from 1919 to 2008, improving. After that, stagnant or the decline. Then we show the forward and backward GVC related output, export and import pattern, both pattern. Then we can see the most highest level of the GVC participation sector is manufacturing sector in terms of the forward and backward GVC related output. So mining sector is lower than the manufacturing sectors because mining sector had a lot of participation in terms of pure forward participation. So we can see the different pattern of GVC participation in manufacturing sectors and mining sectors. Then we try to investigate the GVC participation in manufacturing sector in detail. So we can decompose the four main sectors, subsectors of manufacturing sectors. One sector is auto sectors. Second is petrol, chemical and non-metallic product, and metallic product. And others. Others including the textile, electronics, so many industry I include others. So we can see the highest level of GVC participation sector is petrochemical, non-metallic product. You can see that in Gujarat, very, very large oil refinery factories managed by the Reliance Industries. So this is a typical case of the 5 petrochemical and non-metallic product such high participate in the global value chain. That's why one important factor is the Reliance oil refinery production unit. Then metallic products. And I'm not sure, two different series in the World Bank dataset. So we cannot identify the which is the real situation, especially other sectors. So I'm not sure due to the data problems. This is the same pattern, forward and backward. We focusing on the forward and backward GVC related output. Still the same pattern in previous figures. Findings. First, India's level of participation in GVC is low in the world. Second, the degree of GVC participation in the mining and manufacturing sector is relatively high. In terms of the forward and backward GVC participation, manufacturing sectors has highest level. Within the manufacturing sector, the degree of GVC participation is relatively high in the petroleum, chemical, and non-metallic industries. From 1990s to the global recession 2008, the degree of India's participation in GVC had been increasing. Since the global recession, GVC participation has stagnant, except that of the metallic industries. Because 2010 and 2011, coal scandal happened. After that, the Indian coal sector could not mine the coal. So after that, the metallic industry, steel industry started to import the especially coal from the foreign countries. I think this is the reason why irrespective of the global recession, after the global recession, still GVC participation of steel industry increasing. Plant level perspective. I use the data from the annual survey of industry. So now annual survey of industries unit level data are easily available on website. So I use 1997 and 2017 data, two data sets. Figures of two data sets are not comparable due to the change in the definition of registered sector. 2015, registered definition of the registered sector is changed from the factory. Original definition is the factory with power, if with power, then more than 20 workers, then this factory must be registered under the Factory Act. But after 2015, factory with power and with 40 workers, they must be registered under the Factory Act. So that's why these two figures are not comparable. So I can easily identify the four type GVC participation by using the unit level data of the annual survey of industries. First type of the GVC participation is plants without any international trade, no import, no export. Second is a plant with import only. Third is a plant with export only. Final plant. This is a very important plant for understanding the situation of GVC participation of manufacturing sectors. Plants with both import and export. So this is type of the plants is very, very important for understanding the characteristics of the GVC participation in Indian formal manufacturing sectors. So host type of plant implies the forward and backward participation of GVC. But this concept is the indirectly participation. So we cannot identify the indirectly participation. I can just identify the directly participation of the plant in the GVC. So this is the estimated number of plants in Indian formal manufacturing sectors. So in 1997, 70,000 plants exist. Then after 20 years, twice the volume of the twice, 1.5 lakh. So you can see the without international trade percentage, import only and export only. Then both import and export type of the plants, very small share of the total plants. So this is one very important characteristics. Directly, okay, the plant which directly forward and backward participate in the global value chain is very, very small part of the total plants. Then I can make some tabulation based on the unit level data. Today, I just only focusing on the 2017 data only. you can see the both import and export. How many percentage of the both and export located in rural area? How many average average corporate years? These are 20. Census sector, 55%. Foreign capital share. How many percentage the foreign capital participate in the each categories? 50%. Company share. Company means registered as a company under Company Act. 74%. This is a public enterprise share, only 1%. This is a private sector, company sector share, 73%. This is a mostly required more compliance. So public limited company share, 70%. So you just look at this figure compared to the without international trade. So huge difference between the without international trade type of the plants and both import and export type of the plants. So I'd like to show the size, wage, and productivity. We just look at the 2070 data. How many these type of the plants employees, total persons engaged, workers, without international traders, only 67, but both and export type of the plants, 460 persons. Capital labor ratio, this is a rupee, in terms of rupees, wage rate, and labor productivity, and total capital productivity. So both import and export plants has much more size, much more wage, much more productivity. Technology. So Internet to ISO 2000, these data refer to the 1997. ISO 14,000 and Ireland share refer to the 2017 figures. So you can see that both import and export adopt more advanced technology more aggressively than other type of the plants. So how is the involvement not only global value chain, but also domestic value chain network? So it is very difficult to identify the involvement, the network of global value chain. It is very difficult to identify, but fortunately, annual survey of industry asks the company to the income from manufacturing and non-manufacturing service and payment for manufacturing and non-manufacturing service. So some scholar, some Indian and Japanese scholar investigate this kind of the subcontracting system of manufacturing sector by using ASI data. So just I use this concept in this context. So we can identify that without any subcontracting and subcontracting only, outsourcing only, both subcontracting, outsourcing. So both subcontracting and outsourcing can be recognized as the more involvement in the domestic value chain network. So you can see that both 2070 data, both import and export, the both subcontracting outsourcing share is highest compared to the other type of the plants. So this figure shows that the more GVC participating plants also involved in engaging in the domestic value chain network. And also, I just look at the location distribution of GVC participating the farm plants. But today I consumed a lot of time for previous section. Just I skip these figures. And also, I can make some figures from the industry-wise distribution of the GVC participating the plants. This type. But today we skip these figures. Findings. The host type of plants which directly participate forward and backward in GVC has an organizational structure that requires greater compliance with laws and regulations, has a higher level of technology and a larger in size compared to other type of plants. This host type of plants has a higher percentage of subcontracting outsourcing and more involved in domestic value chain activities than other type of plants. There are significant differences in the distribution of industry and the location of the host type of plants. So I shortened the explanation section 4. Just based on the literature review of GVC studies of the Indian industry. This is a strategy, empirical strategy. Google Scholar, I use Google Scholar, global value chain, global project network, global commodity chain with India as keyword. Development trajectory in global value chain series of Cambridge University Press and GVC related books of OUP. Professor Devanathan edited very good books based on the GVC studies. Influential reports and working papers, ICRIER and ADBI, Ministry of Finance. Research of GVC studies group headed by Gary Jelliffe. Dropping the paper appeared in predatory publishers and macroeconomic and international trade analysis of GVC. Then I finally identified 50 papers and books on the GVC studies on the Indian industry. So you can look at the list which I identified. Very important, influential, and very good papers and book on the GVC studies as case study of using Indian industry. So summary of the GVC studies on the Indian industry. I never look at this in detail, but I summarize. Then findings. Existing GVC studies that use Indian industry as a case study are biased towards automobiles, IT, and pharmaceutical, three main industries, which has been successful in upgrading through GVC participation. This is a successful case studies. And also many studies on Indian agro-business and textile garment industry has focused on social upgrading. Social upgrading is, what is that social upgrading? Labor condition, environmental sustainability. These kind of the subject studies in the as the social upgrading. Very important subject. Sometimes the income inequality. Although GVC studies has strengths in comparative analysis, I unfortunately find there are 6 papers make industry comparison and 13 papers that make industry comparison. The authors' expertise cover a wide range of disciplines, including sociology, geography, anthropology, management science, economics, development studies, and engineering. GVC research is highly characterized as an interdisciplinary collaborative research consisting of various disciplines. Although the analytical terminology is common, according to the theoretical framework, Gary Jelliffe and his colleagues. Concrete remarks. Extent of GVC participation by the Indian economy is low compared to international standard. Firms participating in GVC are active in introducing advanced technology, and the size and workers' wage are high. Firms participating in GVC also involve in participating subcontracting system more aggressively. GVC research in Indian industry has been biased toward automobiles, pharmaceuticals, and IT. GVC studies on important industrial sectors such as oil refinery, where the degree GVC participation is very, very high, has not always been sufficiently conducted. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sato. This was a very extensive presentation on India's partnership in the GVC activities. Now we have two discussants for this talk. I would like to first invite Professor Dev Nathan for his remarks.
So please unmute. Dev Nathan, so please unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Nalin. And thanks to IMPRI and to Professor Sato for a very interesting and wide-ranging presentation. A couple of points come to me from the presentation. One is that Indian industry, not only that which is export-oriented or in global value chains, but even that which is in domestic value chains, according to the data, the ASI data he presented, clearly is getting more and more organized in value chains, so that the extent of outsourcing and subcontracting is growing. That means there is more and more specialization, which is what a value chain really is about, so that you specialize in certain tasks in which, well, you have certain core capabilities and competencies, and therefore you outsource the rest. So that is the one point that struck me from his presentation. I think we generally know that this is happening, but it was good to see the data showing it, that over a period of time, the extent of participation or organization in value chains through subcontracting and outsourcing is increasing. That was the first point which struck me. The second point is that the question of capabilities, and Professor Sato mentioned that there is an enhancement of capabilities when firms participate in global value chains. At one level, yes, it can be there can be a certain type of learning of production systems which are more advanced and more efficient than those in, say, for the domestic value chains. I have seen this in the case of the garment industry. If you visit some areas in Delhi, like Gandhinagar, which are the centers of the domestic value chains, you will see a very haphazard, and you would wonder how they actually produce garments. You will see what looks like a very haphazard and unorganized system of production compared to, say, the garment export factories, which are around the area where I live, which is in Gurgaon. So there's a whole world of difference between the organization of production in domestic value chains and in global value chains. I remember asking one of the owners or managers of one of those domestic value chain producers of garments why he did not move into producing for exports. And he said, well, for that, I'll need a completely different kind of factory. I would have to organize production in a very different way. So that is correct, that there is a very big difference in the manner in which production is organized for domestic and the global value chains, because you have to meet certain quality standards, and the quality standards are not of that type when you work for the domestic manufacturers or for the domestic brands. That's the first point. Second is that, however, it's not as though there's a kind of smooth enhancement of capabilities as you go along the value chain and upgrading. What is the upgrading really to do with? The upgrading can be of two types. One is that you improve your own production facilities, but you remain a manufacturer. And the second is that you upgrade into, say, areas like design and marketing and branding, which are really the preserve and the monopoly of the global brands that are subcontracting to the Indian manufacturers or to other manufacturers around the world, not only in India. So the brands are happy if you upgrade and therefore reduce costs in the manufacturing segment of the value chain, but they do not like to share information or knowledge on the other segments of the value chain, the branding, the marketing, and the design, because that's where they make their, it is by monopolizing these areas, some of it through intellectual property rights, and the other through things like copyright and design name, brand names, etc. Therefore, they are able to earn a very high profit rate, and they would not like to share that knowledge or information with likely competitors. So that's an important point we need to make with regard to the upgrading and the enhancement of capabilities. The second point which I would make, which came up in a study which we did of the garment and other industries. By the way, Professor Sato said that there's a lot of concentration on automobiles and pharmaceuticals and IT, which is correct. But in fact, we've also done, there have been studies of the garment industry. And in fact, with my co-author, I've just completed one on the garment industry in India, which will come out in the, the series that I co-edited for Cambridge University Press. It's called Reverse Subsidies. So why do we call it reverse subsidies? Our point is that in a value chain, in a global value chain, there is a monopsony relationship between the brand and the suppliers. And this monopsony relationship of brand and suppliers, or manufacturers, if you want to put it that way, results in a majority of the profits being cornered by the brands who earn monopoly profits from their property rights of different kinds, while the manufacturers only get the competitive profit rate. Now, this we found to be correct even across sizes and types of technology used. We saw that with the reduction in the lead times, lead times have been falling with the advent of fast fashion. So now the lead times have gone down from the earlier 90 days, and they're often 45 or even 30 days. So lead times have gone down. And as a result of this fall in lead times, we saw two kinds of responses among the manufacturers. One, largely the small to medium ones, became more labor exploitative. They used more overtime. They used more of cheap contract labor, and therefore they reduced their costs in this over-exploitation of the labor force which they employed. The other, which are the large ones, which became larger, are those who utilize technology, organize their production systems better, utilize more technology, more advanced technology. For instance, moved from hand embroidery to computerized machine embroidery and so on. So they improved their technology. But the interesting point we found is that the profit rates don't differ very much between the labor-intensive or labor-exploitative units and the responders and the technology-intensive responders. So which leads us to the conclusion, that's why we say this is a form of monopsony, where the buyers are able to monopolize, get the majority of the profit, and the sellers are reduced to only getting the competitive rate of profit. The difference can be the rate of profit which we found in the garment industry over here is like 9 to 10%, somewhere 8, somewhere 10, maybe 11, but not beyond 12 and not below 8, because below 8 you wouldn't even be able to remain in the industry. So these are the very low rates of profit because of the high level of monopsony. On the other hand, I just will take a minute to compare it with, say, the IT industry, where India is not in a position of being an anonymous supplier to the company, Fortune 500 companies for which they provide IT services. IT IT software services. Rather, the top Indian companies like TCS, Infosys, etc., all have very strong reputational assets, and they are able to keep their margins at around 23 to 25%. So that is very high. And of course, there's a medium rung like the smaller ones, like the L&T or the Mahindra Tech, etc., who have margins around, well, 16, 17, 18%. But you should compare these two sets of margins, one around 25% for the top rung. Obviously, they're not in a monopoly position. They themselves have a certain monopoly power because of their ability, because of their reputation. It's mainly their reputation that the TCS and Infosys have, and they're able to get a certain rate of return. While in garments, you will find that irrespective of the size, there is not much difference. There is some improvement, and there is some improvement in the condition of workers in the large units compared to the small, which I think Professor Sato also pointed out, that wages do go up and working conditions do improve in the large units, but they don't really make a transformational change. They still remain within the area of around the national minimum wage. It's just a little bit more, a little bit less. So it's really not very different. So I would just like to conclude by pointing out these 2 points. One is that the monopoly relations enable the brands, the buyers, the lead firms to get a major share of the profits out of the whole value chain, while the suppliers, who are many, and therefore, and competing between themselves and even between countries, are only able to get the competitive profits in that industry. Thank you. I'll end my comments with that.
Thank you, Professor Devnathan. Now, I would like to request our second discussant, Professor Amita, for a remark.
Thank you, Professor Nalin Bharti, for giving me the opportunity to give my comments on Professor Sato's presentation. Thank you also, Chair, Professor Asher, for your initial comments, the introductory comments. And, I would like to point out a couple of, my comments are more in the sense of seeking clarifications from Professor Sato. First, of course, I'd like to congratulate him on a very wide-ranging, very comprehensive presentation that he's made across 2 parts, I would say, the overall macro perspective that he's given on global value chains, and the second, which is more plant-based micro kind of analysis that he has undertaken. My comments are more in the nature of the first part, because my own work has been in terms of global value chains and trade policy, because ultimately, as far as global value chains are concerned, the impact is really seen in terms of a country's participation in global trade, In that sense, I think I would draw an essential fundamental distinction between global value chains and domestic value chains, and I would, in that context, point out, the difficulty that I have in comprehending the Professor Sato's putting the 2 together in one analysis. There is a huge difference between how global value chains operate and how firms or production units in an individual country participate in global value chains, and how countries try to build complete domestic value chains in any sector, So I think the analysis of the 2 in terms of productivity implications has to be drawn from very different concepts and very different strands of literature than combining the 2 and putting the 2 together in one analysis, I don't think there is a comparison here, From the literature, it is very clear, it is very evident that as far as global value chain participation is concerned, it's, as I said, reflected in trade participation, but that's also, for the purpose of specialization in smaller tasks that enables individual countries to enhance their productivity. Have we in India, through our global value chain participation, I think you do point this out in your initial presentations, but somewhere along the line, this has not been carried forward in your paper. Do we really see, in terms of those firms or those units that participate in global value chains, to have enhanced their productivity? That's my first question to you, In the second question, the second fact that I'd like to point out in your analysis is, that apart from this very broad brush that you give to value chain participation, I do not wish to classify it as global value chain participation, as I said, drawing the distinction between domestic and global value chain participation. That's one. Two, the time period that you take into account, you see, there are huge differences in the terms, in terms of the progress and evolution of global value chain structures over this period, from the 1990s to the current, that you have as your analysis reference period. The global value chains have undergone a very, very distinctive change, particularly in the post-global financial. It's not really the post-global financial crisis period that you demarcate. It's really the 2011-12, after that, the period that you see a clear restructuring and evolution of global value chains towards shorter lengths and towards regionalization in a way, which has become more concentrated, or which has become more accelerated in the wake of the US-China trade tensions, more so during the pandemic. It is expected. Let us see how it happens, So as far as the pattern of evolution of global value chains is concerned, I think you should have drawn a distinction between what happened before 2010-11, what has happened after that, and then beyond that, how is it that we're expecting things to be, These distinctions are essential in terms of looking at individual country participation, because you also see alongside this a change in the participation of individual countries as far as global value chains are concerned. And I say this particularly with reference to 2 or 3 graphs that you've shown, where you've drawn comparisons between ASEAN 5, China, India, Japan, and so on. One has to be very clear about the kind of distinctions that exist as far as these individual economies are concerned in terms and the nature of participation that they've had in global value chains. Southeast Asia has been a very active participant almost throughout the, throughout this phase of your analysis, whether it's 1990s, 2000s, and even now, China, when you show a decline, you see, China's decline is analyzed very, very differently relative to other countries' decline. You can't equate the two. There is a huge debate as far as China is concerned in terms of whether the decline in its value chain, in its global value chain participation, is because of a greater intensification of its upgraded domestic value chains, So, to club all of them together and to show that US is declining, China is declining, Japan is declining, I think there needs to be a nuanced explanation or a nuanced analysis to that before you club all of these countries together and categorize them as one, either declining or rising, That's the other distinction that I want to draw the attention of the audience to, and yours as well, A third thing that you say, in terms of India's analysis, being more concentrated in automotives and pharmaceuticals, I think, as Professor Nathan has already pointed out, there is a lot of literature. In fact, there is more literature on textiles and garments, as far as textiles and apparel, textiles and garments in case of India, and automobiles. These are 2 sectors that find a lot of analysis having been done, because these are where India initially integrated in global value chains, And again, I'd like to point out, in terms of your data analysis, that the decline as far as increase in India's participation is concerned, it did not end in 2008, as you point out, you see. The increase goes on almost up to 2012-13. It's only after that that we start to see a slight decline as far as India's global value chain participation is concerned. So I would, if you can go through the data again and see, there is a very, very clear upward trend of India's value chain participation, global value chain participation in automobiles, as well as in textiles and garments. And the decline happens only much later. This is also true to a certain extent in electronics, where the change in the nature and direction of India's participation is not so clear, because we continue to do so, as we've seen in more recent times with the kind of changes that have been brought about in the electronic sector, particularly as far as the tariff structure in the electronic sector is concerned, as far as input tariffs are concerned. So my my inputs here would be in terms of a relook, if you can take towards data in these sectors. The other thing that I'd like to say here is, that you have in, the greater concentration on automobiles, textiles and garments and electronics as far as India's analysis is concerned, is because this is where you find global value chains to be dominant. These are the three sectors that globally dominate as far as value chain participation is concerned by all countries. It's only natural, therefore, that we, as far as most of the studies in India are concerned, are also concentrated in this. With regard to fuel and oil and lubricants, etc., being the dominant sector, I have to point out here again, that while
I think there is a connection issue with Professor Batra.
Nalin sir, shall we invite Mukul sir for his comment?
Meanwhile, I will request Professor Asar for his comment, and then if she will again come back, then she will also finish her comment. So first of all, I will we would like to have the comment from Professor Asar, and then we'll wait for Professor Amita's re-entry.
Professor Asher, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The presentation and the kind of research that Sensei Sato has presented is so very typical of the research we associate with Japan. Very detailed, meticulous, plant-based, industry-based, getting into great details. And this is one area that we need to learn from, and more research needs to be done on such a meticulous, detailed basis. On the global value chains, one of the useful insights that Sensei can provide us is that recently India has taken a lot of initiatives with the Atmanirbhar globalization, others, and very specifically to increase the global value chain participation. So this year, India is aiming for USD 400 billion in merchandise exports alone. And the vision is to reach 1 trillion USD by the end of the decade. Now, this can't be done without much greater participation in the global value chains, both ways, imports as well as exports, and technology. So what are the policy implications of the research that you have done specifically for India? And if I may make a personal observation for India and Japan, one of the positions which I hold is as chairman of the board of directors of Sumitomo Chemical India Private Limited. And we are in India collaborating with Sumitomo Japan to try to get some of the R&D done in India, some of the products that Sumitomo is currently producing in Japan and elsewhere to be manufactured in India. And we have just bought a 50-acre land in the H industrial area to try to give concrete shape to that. So it would be useful then as to getting down to the policy level. One area to explore, not just by Sensei, but by Indian researchers, is the India-Japan, which is a very strategic partnership as to how that global value chain can be increased. The other much larger picture, which is just emerging, is that if we see a slowdown in, let's say, China's economic growth and therefore global economic growth in investment, we have already seen the relationship between GDP and global trade, which was about 1.5% before coming down towards 1. What will be the implications of that on the global value chains in the future for selected countries? So that dynamic part, that research is very, very rich, and I hope it is something that can be pursued further. Okay, let me just stop here as we are running out of time.
Yeah, so Professor Amita, you were about to conclude your point. So can I again ask you to conclude your point?
Yeah, just as a concluding point, something that has already been, I think, brought in by Professor Asher is the manufacturing capability, as has been stated, that India is trying its Atmanirbharta, as one of the objectives of Atmanirbhar, policy or assignment that India has outlined for itself. It's very important that it participate or it increase its participation in global value chains, My question to you, Professor Sato, is in these terms, when you say that India's participation has been high, relatively high in manufacturing, particularly in the fuel and lubricant sector, that is the petroleum oil and lubricant sector, that's petroleum and refined petroleum products, has it really led to any increase in manufacturing productivity and capabilities for India? Where you show that increase in wages for India, is it associated with an increase in productivity in this sector, in general in manufacturing, in general in other sectors where value chain participation is seen in India? Or what, how do you associate productivity increase with value chain participation as far as India is concerned in the sectors that you are able to identify India's higher value chain participation? That relationship with which you start, I think, must also be brought in at some level for India's participation in, for India's value chain participation that you show in the manufacturing sector. I think I'll stop here and look forward to your answers. Thank you, Nalin.
Yeah, Professor Sato, now I think this is your time to respond to some of the questions by the discussant, and then I will also take some of the questions from the other audience, those who are joining this program from the Facebook Live. So first of all, Professor Sato, can you respond to these questions which were asked by the discussant?
Thank you very much, Professor Devnatan. So I know that you will publish the very good book, Monopsony Capitalism, CUP. So I'm very lucky to have your statement on new book. Thank you very much. So in GVC studies, so many scholars clarified several types of the governance type, capture type, market type, multinational companies type, and modular type, relational type. So I think monopsony capitalism is also regarded as some type of GVC governance. So maybe monopsony type of monopsony capitalism is one type of capture governance type. Is it correct? I'm not sure. So I want to know the some clarification of the GVC concept and the concept of the monopsony capitalism. Very similar concept, I think. And also, today I skip so many existing studies on agro business and also textile and garment industry. Still, GVC studies have on India, so many papers, so many books on the garment sectors and agribusiness sectors also. So, but according to my data set, 50 papers and books, top 3 is IT, pharmaceutical, automobiles. So next 4 and 5 is agro business and textile and garment sectors. This is due to my data set. So thank you very much. Yeah, so Professor Devanathan raised so many important points. Thank you very much. Professor Batra, so thank you very much for your comments and questions. So I neglected so many nuanced phenomena, especially in the recent period, after especially the under Narendra Modi registration. So after Narendra Modi registration, I think Make in India campaign strongly promoted. So after that, increase in tariff rate, especially the some footwear's tariff rate, huge increase. Labor intensive and low tech industry, especially the goods in which the many small companies have engaged in the very labor intensive with low technology. In such kind of the low tech labor intensive industry, the tariff rate huge increased. So this is also the part of the Make in India campaign. So, and also Make in India campaign promote the Make in India of the smartphone and some electronics equipment. So I think these kind of the tariff rate has some impact of the industrial structure and the pattern of the GVC participation of each firms and each industries. Today, I skip these aspects, including the Self-Reliant India program, production-linked incentive scheme programs. Today, I skip. So now, so many incentive schemes, so many trade policies have some impact. So today I cannot give some concrete evidence for this. So next time I try to show these kind of phenomena. And also in the other part of my research subject, I study the impact of foreign direct investment. And also I studied the impact of the reduction of the tariff rate by using the data set from the annual survey of industries. So this research line is based on the standard international economic analysis. So on this time, I skip all of my existing research result based on the standard international economic analysis. So from my ongoing research subject, especially the reduction of the import tariff, especially of intermediate goods. These type of the reduction of the tariff rate increase total factor productivity in the Indian manufacturing sectors. And also foreign direct investment, especially the backward effect of FDI spillover effect has positive impact of the total factor productivity of Indian manufacturing sectors. So I conducted such kind of the standard economic analysis also. Next time I share my research result with you, if I have some chance to interact with you. This is okay?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,
And Professor Ashore, thank you very much for your kind comment. I also conducted the economic activity of Japanese affiliated multinational companies working in India with Nalin Bharti. So maybe within 1 year, we will publish one long papers, discussion papers on the economic activity of Japanese affiliated multinational company working in India by using unit level data of Japanese government conducted survey, overseas business activity survey from 1995 to 2018. For last 22, we will examine how that change the behavior of the Japanese multinational companies working in India. So thank you very much.
yeah, thank you, Professor Sato. We have two questions related to your talk. So the first question in the chat box and also in the question and answer box is, please share your views on the need for enhancing digital connectivity post-pandemic for trade and JVC.
Yeah, this is a very important questions. Current situation. So I always keen to know the progress of the digitization of India. Narendra Modi administration started Digital India, and they pushed the very nice program for improving the digitization. So especially I am very interested in the other JAM program, Jandan Aadhaar Mobile JAM program for direct income transfer to the vulnerable sections in the society. And also I am very keen to fintech technology, especially based on the Aadhaar. The Indian government started to set up the Indian Stack. Indian Stack is a platform for interacting the each financial company engaged in the something based on the Indian Stack. So my personal friend involved in the construction of the and the utilization of the Indian Stack. So okay, so this kind of the digitization of India is very, very important for understanding the structural change of the GVC governance and structural change of the GVC pattern. If we start to understand the recent situation of the digitization in the world, so India is most advanced countries, I think. For example, we have the PayPay, Pay. This is a digital mobile phone payment system. Originally, this PayPay originated in the Paytm. So we adopt, now Japan adopt the very advanced technology from India, Paytm. My wife every day uses the PayPay. This is an Japanese version of the Paytm. So this is a very new one. So I appreciate this kind of the advanced progress in the digitization in the world as well as in India. But this is okay.
Yeah. So Professor Sato, we have one more question
Yes.
related to the social network. And the person is asking about the overdependence of the world, including business on social network platforms, led to huge losses on GVC. What should be the way forward in dealing with such challenges in future?
I'm not sure. Facebook and LinkedIn social network system make some contribution to making some business network, not only time-consuming activity. Maybe Twitter and WhatsApp maybe time-consuming, but the Facebook and LinkedIn have some positive contribution to improvement the business condition and information, fill some gap of the information across the countries. Now we are very easily to access to the some important person by using the Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm not sure.
So one last question is related to the current coal crisis. So the participant is writing that it will be a difficult time for managing the production in India, and how Indian industry will try to come out from such crisis.
Yeah, it is very difficult situation. We Japanese also face the same problems. COP26 just will start this week, COP26. So in the COP26 agenda, the green technology, no carbon neutral. So especially EU started to stop the utilization of the coal for making the electricity. So and China also started to close mining companies, coal mining companies. So these kind of the carbon neutral policy and also Green New Deal policy based by the US Biden administration. These kind of the worldwide policy change towards the green technology, carbon neutral technology, Green New Deal program induced current coal crisis. So this is a very difficult situation. Personally, I prefer that still India energy sector need coal as a material for making the electricity. So these are very difficult questions, and this is not only the Indian problems, but also the worldwide problem. which is very difficult.
So now I will request both the discussant for 2 minutes way forward based on the presentation of Professor Sato. Both the discussants are now invited for 2 minutes way forward remark. So Professor Devanathan.
Okay, just 2 points with regard to the way forward. One is for Indian manufacturing to become more competitive, to be able to increase its productivity in order to be better, participate better in value chains. As I mentioned, it may not lead to an increase in profit rates, but volumes can go up. So if you want to become a big player in the value chain area, you need to have more productive investments, more productive manufacturing, which requires not only better infrastructure, etc., which India is notorious for infrastructure, but it also requires, well, a way of doing business that is not so bureaucratic. I mean, we still have, despite all the talk about how we're going to digitize everything, we still have a very bureaucratic system of managing finances, where I've heard many garment manufacturers complain about how difficult it is for them to get GST reimbursements after they have paid GST. So those kind of things don't help. Along with that, we need much better labor policies, because it's not just a matter of thinking that with cheap labor, I mean, there seems to be an idea that because Indian labor is cheap, our wage rates are low, so we can get any part of the world manufacturing value chain to be settled in India. That's not so. That will not happen. That's why we don't see that there is a big role of India in, say, garment manufacture, where actually India's share of garment manufacture has been falling. Similarly, also in leather and leather products, where also our share is not increasing. And certainly with all the big turmoils we've had with regard to the entire leather value chain, it's becoming more and more difficult. And in fact, people are shifting their orders to Bangladesh and other countries rather than giving them in India. So there's a big need to be able to increase the the productivity levels, which requires much better, much larger proportions of permanent workers with much better conditions of labor and working. That's the main point I would like to make. Secondly, we also need to see how to develop technology, because it is the, as I mentioned, it is the technology firm, it is where you have a monopoly of the brand and the technology that you're able to get a higher share of the profits in the way that China has been able to do. We do not see many Indian lead firms developing in that manner. We do have some. We have Tatas, Mahindras, and a few others, but we don't have it to the extent that China has developed it. So if you want to go up in the value chain, in the global value chain, you really need to go from beyond manufacturing to the design and the development of technology itself. Thank you.
So now I will request Professor Amita for her 2 minutes way forward.
Yeah, my two very brief points. One, of course, is I'd like to put it the other way around, that as far as enhancing manufacturing productivity is concerned, both for enhancing manufacturing productivity as well as for employment, India really needs to integrate with global value chains. At present, our global value chain participation is very low, particularly when it comes to the backward low-skill labor-intensive linkages in labor-intensive sectors, And these, as I quoted earlier, are in terms of electronics, automotives, as well as garments and apparel, where garments and apparel in particular, where we had an increasing share earlier, we've lost the share post-2010 in global exports, So we need to recover, and the way to recover, I mean, as far as increasing our participation in global value chains is concerned, 2 points that I'd like to make, which I've been writing repeatedly in my, larger press columns, as far as op-ed columns and print media are concerned, is one, to have a conducive, other than what Professor Nathan has stated as logistics, ease of doing business, etc. Very fundamentally, we need to bring about or have a conducive trade policy, One is in terms of changing our tariff structure, where in the last few years, we've done a reversal in terms of increasing our import tariffs on some of the intermediate commodities in these very important sectors. And two is to integrate better with a more dynamic region, which is Southeast Asia, East Asia, where we have lost the opportunity as far as the regional comprehensive economic partnership is concerned. But I hope we can make it up through a better revision that is under review, a better review that is already underway of the India-ASEAN FTA, probably try and participate also in the CPTPP if we can upgrade our standards to that level. But I think regional trade agreements, regional trade integration, and a conducive trade policy is absolutely essential for India to enhance its GVC participation, which underlies our ability to enhance our manufacturing productivity. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Professor Sato for his way forward remark.
Thank you very much for very nice introduction with many Indian scholars. So I appreciate the comments and the questions from Professor Ashu and Professor Devanathan and Professor Amita Batra. So thank you very much. So I personally, I hope that if you are okay, I want to keep touch with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I will request Professor Azhar for his remarks.
So please unmute yourself, Professor Asher.
Thank you, Nalin. I already indicated what I wanted to say, so no more comments.
Yeah, so let me conclude the entire discussion. So I found that the presentation by Professor Sato highlighted that in terms of India's participation in GVC, the participation rate of India is not very high compared to other countries. But at the same time, we can also see that there are few sectors where India's participation is growing with a little better speed. So many points which was raised by Devanathan in terms of labor policy reform, or the questions which was raised by some of the audience in terms of the coal crisis. So all these factors are basically making us aware that whatever opportunity India is having, these opportunity cannot be captured. These opportunity will be completely unbound if certain reforms in terms of policy and certain precautions in terms of inputs has not been done. So there is a fact that kaleidoscopic comparative advantage is in the hand of India, and there are many other Asian countries which are also ready to compete with India in terms of textile and in other sectors also. So India cannot be a sleeping elephant, considering the potential of many smaller countries nearby, and many countries are in the position to compete, including Bangladesh, as it was highlighted by Devanathan. So this is the first point which I would like to highlight, that it is having the potential, but such potentials has to be again bound enough for making India more better in terms of providing employment, having more economic growth, faster growth, and to make India more bigger size of the economy in future. Associating this point with another point which is having in my mind, and for which Professor Azhar has somehow linked through his remarks, that whenever it comes for the production global value chain, we are finding some of the destinations where we have the cost efficiency, where we can have the low cost of production. But at the same time, the host countries should not forget that instead of becoming only manufacturing hub, we can also try to work on becoming knowledge hub. It's not only to have the production as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is also true that apart from doing manufacturing offshore for other firms in India and participating in the global value chain, we should not miss the most important fact that if we have to go ahead, if we have to reach to a better economic indicators, we have to also have more patent applications filed, more copyright, more industrial designs, more integrated circuits produced. So as long as India is not in the position to produce intellectual property rights product, we will be only known as the you can say manufacturer for others. But if we have to become manufacturing brand, if we have to become a leader in the manufacturing, we cannot forget that we have another task also on our table, and that is to produce intellectual property products. So with this remark, I would like to just conclude and congratulate Professor Sato for this very timely, wonderful, and very deep analyzed presentation on this issue and India's participation in this global value chain. Thank you, IMPRI, for giving us this opportunity to reconnect on this topic. People from Japan, Singapore, and India are now here on a single platform. And I hope that in future also we will have such opportunities to have much better interaction for such timely talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So to give a formal vote of thanks, I invite Dr. Simi Mehta.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Bharti. I totally echo your comments and congratulations to all our esteemed panelists. So I would really like to thank the speaker for today, Professor Takahiro Sato, and our esteemed panelists, Professor Mukul Asher, Professor Devnathan, and Professor Amita Batra, and your own participation, sir, Professor Nalin Bharti. In fact, the whole deliberation really enhanced the understanding about the global value chain participation and the role of India in it. So I'm so grateful. On behalf of IMPRI Center for the Study of Finance and Economics, I thank each one of you for your sparing your time and for sparing your knowledge and sharing it with all of us. And I also extend my thanks and gratitude to all our audience who joined us here on Zoom and on Facebook Live, and to all those who will be watching us later on YouTube and also listening to us on our podcasts. So thank you, and I wish that we will be able to meet and discuss about this soon. And I wish you all a very good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Sato.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sato, and all. Professor Amita,
Oh.
Professor Dev, Dr.
Thank you
Raj.
very much.
Yeah.